So my name's Will, and I'm a conductor. I trained actually as a composer in my 20s in London at the Academy, but during that time I was beginning to get going with conducting, and when I finished that, I've moved fully now into conducting and also working as a repetiteur, so in opera contexts. But my sort of first love is contemporary music, and conducting it and bringing it to life is what I love to do. And when I saw the opportunity to work with Next, with this programme, I thought it would be a great thing for me to get some experience, get some rep under my belt, develop a relationship with an organisation like BCMG, and to look at some big pieces like Vortex Temporum, which we're looking at this week. So Grisey is a composer who's working, he's French, and he was living and working after the Second World War, and it's easy to forget, even though it's comparatively recent, what the world was like and what music was like after that time, and all the certainties and all the traditions of that pre-war period were kind of blown out of the water, especially given that so many of the kind of central ideas of what we think of as music were from the Austro-German tradition, and now there was some kind of confusion and anxiety about what it meant to be still basing our musical lives on music and ideas from that part of the world. So lots of composers were rethinking how we could put together music from first principles. So you've got people like Boulez, who were kind of atomizing music, going back to the very basic ingredients and putting them together in ways we shouldn't always rely on human emotion and on our kind of instinctive impulses. I think the atmosphere after that time must have been that, emotion and our kind of unthinking emotional impulses might be a dangerous thing to be including in our work. So there's a kind of pushback on that in terms of real calculation, mathematical principles, and other composers are working with electronic music for the first time. People like Cage are kind of thinking about music in a totally different way. And one of these kind of schools, we think of them in kind of groups of ideas through which music is written, is spectralism, which sounds like a long word, but actually what it really means is that composers are looking at the very basis of what sound is. So in the same way that other composers are looking deeply into how we can organise music again, some composers are looking really deeply into what it means to play and hear a sound. So what Grisey and other composers like Tristan Murail are doing are analysing a single sound to work out all the different sounds that are contained within it, and then building pieces out of that material. So what that means is that it's really based on harmonies, on the harmonies that you and I hear every day in all kinds of other music. And then from out of that, you kind of think about the building blocks not only then of sound, but also of rhythm and of time. And one of Grisey's preoccupations is to maybe re-examine as a composer how a piece of music can reshape our experience of time. And in Vortex Temporum, that's one of the main preoccupations. So Grisey died pretty young, actually, in his 50s, I think, just at the end of the 90s, having written some pieces in his kind of maturity, which is still played all over the world today. And it's one of the great losses, I think, for post-war music, all the music that Grisey might have written. But we have some of these pieces, and Vortex is about 40 minutes long. It's for 6 instruments and a conductor sometimes. It starts with a quote, actually, from a piece by Ravel, from Daphnis and Chloe, just a very short arpeggio figure. So a phrase that goes up and then goes down, and does that in different ways. And that kernel, that very basic idea of something starting, and then there's actually the first gesture of the piece, it gets softer. The idea of an arpeggio and then something getting louder and getting softer becomes the kind of basic idea for the whole piece. And we go through this enormous journey over 3 movements where our experience of time is compressed, expanded, suspended. The second movement is perhaps my favourite, and it's a continual chain of descending arpeggios, phrases in the piano. It's a bit like one of those kind of MC Escher staircases, which kind of you keep going down and you never get to the bottom. It just goes on and on and on, while the ensemble on top are layering some spectral harmonies. And then in the second half of the movement, that regular pulse suddenly begins to be distorted, and our experience of time is suddenly compromised, and then gradually returns again. So nothing is ever kind of taken for granted in Grisey's work. He's always thinking about how this experience can be something which is stable, understood, or unstable, something which is confusing, and then reconciled at the end. And at the very end of the piece, the Vortex Temporum 3, the last movement, is half a piece, 20 minutes long. And it's an enormous journey as this material that he's built up or kind of stated in the first two movements of the piece begins to unwind very, very slowly. And at the end, that all that he's done and created distills itself into one single gesture which the ensemble plays all together, which is just something, a chord getting louder and then getting softer. And then at the end, essentially, we don't make any pitches anymore, we just make breath noise, but it's the same gesture, out and in. And you realise that, and in fact, the whole gesture or language of the piece has also been about a kind of breath. So it's music that's really derived from, or kind of comes from our experience of listening to music, but also challenges that in every way. And so working on it with Next has been really interesting because music makes sense to us very immediately, but also challenges everything we know about playing music. So one of the things we do a lot in this piece is start a note very softly and grow to it being very loud, and then do innuendo again very slowly. But we have to do it in a way unlike any other sort of crescendo and diminuendo that we do in any other music. We have to do it really, really gradually and very really gradually the other end. And that's just not how we normally play that kind of gesture. And so we've kind of had to re-examine what it means for a sound to start and for it to finish. What does it mean to make a sound that's stable or unstable? So we've had to kind of re-examine the building blocks of our practices as instrumentalists and as me as a conductor. Really challenging, but really exciting. And the thing about Next is that we've been able to have the time to do it properly. So in our normal musical life, that obviously during the pandemic has been different, things that happen quickly, and you'll have a couple of rehearsals for a concert. And they're marvellous, BCMG's concerts are absolutely fantastic, but having seen some rehearsals through Next, you see how they're put together quickly, and the virtuosity of the players means that they can assimilate material really quickly and then perform it. But a piece like this, because it's kind of re-examining the basics, you need time. You almost need to kind of retreat from the world to work on it. And that's what we've been able to do this week. So we've had 3 days of this work and some coaching from Julian Anderson, who's a composer who's got a long relationship with BCMG, and he's in a way our link to the spectral movement. He knew Grisey really, really well, and he has supervised a lot of performances of this music and by other composers of the same school. And so he's coming to help us make sure that we're really making the music live as Grisey intended. So this kind of opportunity to delve into a masterpiece like this is really special. And there aren't many pieces of contemporary music that I know that have this level of kind of creative ambition, that they're not just writing a piece of music which is effective, which we can enjoy. It's something which is like the creative ambition is very deep and very profound. Having said that, it's an incredible ride. Personally, I think of the kind of contemporary music that I've performed, it's some of the music which makes itself most clear to the audience about what's going on, and you can follow the journey super clearly. So it's a thrilling thing to be working on, and for me to be able to lead, and it's exactly the kind of opportunity that Next provides.